Welcome to the last in a series of 4 videos on doing a systematic review. The final step in the process is to write it up. It's very important that you check your project handbook and ask your supervisor for advice as to which sections you should include. The usual sections that would be included in a project write-up would be the introduction, which sets as background, the aims and objectives and the research question. You then have your methods section, which would include details of the databases you searched, a brief outline of your search strategy and keywords, and the inclusion and exclusion criteria you used. That's followed by the results section, and this would normally include a PRISMA diagram, which I'll talk more about on the next slide. Then you would also summarise the literature in a table to help draw out the key aspects of each one. And if you're doing a meta-analysis, you would also include your forest plots here. For the discussion section, have a look at other systematic reviews for ideas as to how this would be written and talk to your supervisor. And then the final sections would be your conclusions, your reference list, check your handbook for which style you need to use, and you may have to include appendices as well with things like your detailed search strategies and maybe your raw data as well. You will need to include a PRISMA diagram in your results section in your write-up, and this shows the number of references left at each stage of the screening process. There are templates available to download from the PRISMA website, and you can find links to those in the systematic review guide, and the QR code on this slide will take you through to that. There are 2 versions of the template though, and you'll need to discuss with your supervisor which one they want you to use. So the first one, the simple one, which is shown on the right of the screen here, to record the results from your database searching, and that might be sufficient for your project. But you may think about adding extra results from things like Google searches, from Google Scholar perhaps, or from looking at the references cited in the key papers that you're finding. And they would be recorded in the more complex template, which has another column over to the right of the one shown on the screen here, so you can record the number of additional papers that you found. So if we just have a look at the template on the right, so this is an example of a PRISMA diagram for a study. The top box is all about recording how many references you found when you did your searches. So it's the total number of results that you got, and also the individual numbers found on each database that was searched. So in this example, 4 databases were searched to give us something over 1,000 references. The box on the right then records how many duplicates, so once you run through your deduplication process, how many duplicates were removed, and then the record screen box is the total number that were left in your library, your EndNote library, that were unique studies, unique papers. The next bit is all about recording the results of your title and abstract screening, so the total number you excluded at this stage goes in the box on the right, and the number that you thought could be useful goes in the report sort for retrieval box. So this is the total number of papers that you try and get the full text for. It is possible at this stage to exclude the ones that you couldn't get hold of the full text for, so they would be recorded in that reports not retrieved box. So the reports assessed for eligibility are the total number of full text papers that you were able to read and assess. So once you'd read those, you would decide which ones were relevant. If they weren't relevant, you need to record the reasons why. So in the box on the bottom right, you list the reasons which are based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria, and the total number of papers that you recorded for you excluded for those reasons. And then the final box at the bottom, the included studies. Now there are 2 numbers in this box. Most of the time, you'll probably find those numbers are the same. So basically, it's recording the number of studies as opposed to the number of actual articles or reports of those studies. So you may find there's been a particularly big study done, and there have been several articles written about that study. So in which case, the number of studies would be lower than the number of reports of the study. And vice versa, you may find that one report or one article is discussing 2 or 3 different studies, so in which case your number of reports will be lower than the number of studies that are covered by those reports. So I hope that might make some sense as to the difference between those numbers. So this is a PRISMA diagram that you will need to include in your write-up of your systematic review. Also in your results section, you should look to include a table to help you structure your analysis of the studies you have left. And the headings that you use on this will vary according to the purpose. So here are a couple of possible examples. So first of all, you need some way of identifying each study. So that would be giving the author names and the year of the study. You might be looking at what methods they used. You might want to pick out the key findings and then what are the real implications of that study for the review that you're doing. And then the second example brings together authors and year in one column. And then this one was looking at sort of study design, who the target group was. I want to pick out the population size for that study and then have a summary of findings. So this is really very individual to your review. This is an example of a summary table taken from a published article for a systematic review, and you can see the way they've picked out key bits of information that they wanted to analyse in the results that they'd found. So they've got the study details, which is the authors and the year, and also where that study took place. They've got details of the study design and then the target group. And this study was looking at food literacy. So what sort of measure were they using to judge food literacy, the outcome measure as well. And then they've got a key summary of the findings from that paper. So it's just a good way to try and really pick out what's important about each of the studies that you're including in your review. Depending on the nature of your study, a textual or narrative synthesis may be enough. But if there is data in those studies that you're finding, you may need to do a meta-analysis. So this draws together all of the data from all of the studies. You would do a statistical analysis on that data, which would usually result in a forest plot, as in the example shown below. And what this does is give a summary of the effectiveness of an intervention. For more support with doing a meta-analysis, talk to your supervisor or take a look at step 7 of our systematic review guide and just scan the QR code on the right of the screen to go directly to it. I hope this series of videos has given you a good overview as to what's involved in doing a systematic review, but for more help and advice, have a look at our systematic review guide. Just scan the QR code on the left of the screen. You'll also need to consult your project handbook and of course discuss your study with your supervisor. But if you need more support with actually running your search, which databases to use, using EndNote to manage those search results, then please do make an appointment with your academic liaison librarian who will be happy to help. Good luck with your study.